Hello, Sunny.
Hi.
Yeah, this is us, practicing for perfection. So my name is Rovital Hassan Achoum. I'm an energy reader and transformational life and business coach. Basically, I'm working with development, personal development, and business development. And here is my colleague Sunny. We have met in person in the Divine Living Academy in Miami, South Beach, in the end of 2017. It has been unbelievably nice. We were standing in the queue to get our green juice in that beautiful day, and we took it from there. And last time I heard Sunny, she was talking with another one of our Divine Living Academy sister. And I just couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I was just commenting constantly. And I said, well, instead of me, making myself an unexpected guest, let me host it, let me make it, let me celebrate it. And this is how it started. So Sunny is. She's a vegan chef. She's running her own restaurant with her husband in New York, in Manhattan, New York.
Not a restaurant, by the way. No restaurant anymore.
Okay, so now you have it in a different form, and she's a vegan chef, food one, and a lifestyle consultant. Okay, and one of the things that ring my ears so hard is when Sunny was talking about the vegan wine experiences and about the environmental issues that she had came up. She discovered on her journey to become a lifestyle consultant, and with the food studies that she did, which was very excessive. So Sunny, it was me presenting you. You have the stage to talk about yourself.
That's very sweet of you. Thanks, Rovital. I'm excited to be here. We did have some technical difficulties trying to do a Facebook Live, but at least we can come to you in the flesh here. So apologies for my casualness, but I did blow out my knee yesterday, so I have to kind of sit comfortably on the couch. But anyway, that's how it is to be an entrepreneur. At least I'm not missing work, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, I'm really excited to be here. I think the idea about this is just to kind of have a casual chat. Of course, we all are passionate about different aspects of veganism and how that could potentially fit into your life, whether you are vegan or not, or even contemplating, maybe you just want to add more vegetables into your diet, or, maybe forego plastic, whatever it is that you're trying to do that is going to improve the world in one shape or another is great. So I always applaud small steps. I'm not going to be the vegan that's going to be, I always say that in my interviews, that's going to be here with my finger at you and pinpointing all the things you're doing wrong, but rather applauding you for things that you are trying to do to become more conscious of how you live and how we interact with one another, not just with us, each other as humans, but with all species, because it is so important. The way we are producing food today, the way we are living is just not sustainable. And whether or not you agree with, or wanting to become vegan, I mean, there's plenty of research that shows some pretty scary statistics, right? So we're just really here to see, how can we become better humans? How can we improve? How can we elevate our consciousness? How can we, take a small step today? It is not about changing, 180 degrees overnight, because that change is always difficult. However, if we maybe start with our mindset and start sort of researching or maybe questioning things that you have learned since childhood, right? About how we should eat, how we should live. Is it really true? Or did you just kind of blindly adapt it? Because many people think that vegan is so weird, but in essence, it's not. It's really the most natural way to live and be in tune with nature. So that's really kind of wanted to set the stage for the conversation. And I'm sure, Rovital, you have some interesting viewpoints on this as well. I know I was really happy to find out that you also believe in this and being vegan and not hurting animals, and also for our health, right? Which is really important. So thanks again for giving me the platform and inviting me on. I'm really excited to be here.
Wow. Yeah, me too. I remember that when I was hearing you talking, you were talking about your journey about becoming a vegan, that, and it's something that happened lately with your evolution into food. And I found it really fascinating from my point of view, because for me, veganism is nearly 4 decades of a journey, really. Because the first time I have heard about veganism was when I joined the military. I was in a special force. I was in the intelligence force. I've been, in that room with a girl, and all of a sudden I see her taking out a little bag with some dry fruits and nuts, and she said that this is what she eats, and it came in as a concept to me over there. And then I've realized that then there are people who are vegetarians. Okay, and these are the people who are the vegans, and the vegans are on the top of the of that totem, so to say. But today I understand that there are even more higher levels of awareness than just being a vegan. There are higher level of people being raw vegan. There are people who are being just fruitarians. There are people, and there are also those people who completely detach from food and living on prana. And I met people like this too. I was able to get to know a woman, and she was born like this. She was born like that. So basically, I have realized that there are different levels of awareness that we can develop and apply with our foods. So it really, and also another thing that I have realized, and this is a matter of culture, because I was born into a Jewish home, and my mom basically didn't eat dairy at all. So I had to, and it took me many decades to understand that this is her entire culture: don't touch dairy for kosher reasons. I didn't know that until later on. And my mom basically is not very much of a meat eater. She likes the plant-based food, and this is basically most of their food. We used to cook meat on the weekends, and not even all weekends, so it wasn't anything too unusual for me that there was no meat on the table. And the fact, my mom constantly used to complain, about other people, that if they didn't have meat on the table, they felt deprived, or as if it's not food. So she was complaining about this. And it sounds unbelievable to me that it's even possible that people are now going to feel satisfied or happy, with a meal that doesn't have meat in it. It was such a foreign concept for me, as somebody who used to have meat, but I couldn't understand why meat's supposed to be in every meal 3 times a day. I didn't understand that meat was supposed to show up in certain meals and not all meals, you see. And another thing is that as Jews, we have food restrictions, okay? And when I came here about 10 years ago, I started to face a culture that has no restrictions on food, okay? And the first time I saw that people were having this breakfast like, there is a, I saw it that they can have everything in the same. Like they have the jam, the jello, they can have the ham, they can have the eggs, they can have the waffles, and they can have the chocolate, and they can have everything. They have and they can put and the eggs, and they can put it all in the same plate and have it for breakfast. And I was like, oh man, how do you eat that? And when I was first visiting in England, I was able to see the English breakfast, and I was like, oh wow, how can you eat that? It was sausages, and it was ham, and it was beans, and I don't know what else it was, and the eggs, of course, the eggs. And I said, my goodness, this is, how can you survive that breakfast? So basically I came from a world that has a lot of food restrictions and rules. Let's say in Judaism, there is a total separation between dairy and meat. You don't put them together. So when McDonald's came to Israel first time, and they couldn't do the cheeseburger because it was absolutely not kosher. So but if people wanted to have the cheese, they used to give it to them in a sealed bags, like a slice, and then they can do it themselves, but it wasn't part of the kitchen. Yeah, which was funny. So for me, the idea that people can eat whatever with whatever whenever, that didn't make sense at all. And I had to learn, and basically I had to be very comfortable with being different. First with the kosher rules, okay, and then with the vegan choice. And I think, and how do you feel about the idea that you basically chose a diet that considered to be, or to bring you into the face of being different? How do you deal with that? Because I feel that a lot of people can have an issue with, identifying themselves as different in ways.
Well, luckily, I was never afraid of that. I always considered myself different. I grew up in Norway, and I couldn't wait to leave when I was 18 because I just was like not identify myself with anything Norwegian. Of course, now I do because I'm older and, our roots grow stronger. But back then it was just like I was kind of the trailblazer. Nobody traveled internationally, and we did. My family did. So I always chose the untraditional route. So of course, if anyone was going to go vegan in the family, it would be me, right?
Wow.
So and there was a lot of things that of course I could have been worried about. I've shared the story before in many other interviews about how I used to have a blog. I still have a blog called Arctic Grub, which is my Norwegian food blog. And I wrote about animal foods when I ate animals, right? Of course, Norwegian food is plentiful in seafood. You have the smoked salmon, you have the herring, you have the reindeer, you have all kinds of creamy cakes and dairy and cheese. And then I had to tell my readers that I'm going vegan, and I was afraid they were going to all leave me, but they stayed because I did sort of do it in a way that I explained why this was important to me. And I'm vegan for the animals. So I'm really an ethical vegan first. But I also found that I didn't have to choose. I don't have to choose one or the other, even though I probably would have been vegan even if it was unhealthy. But luckily for me, it's one of the healthiest ways to eat, right, as well. And of course, as for the environment, it's a must to reduce your meat and dairy intake, So I didn't really feel, I had such a strong conviction about it that I wasn't really going to care what anyone else thought about it, and even my husband, he's not vegan. We married before I was vegan, and I had to sort of make the choice. Like some vegans say, I could never be married to a non-vegan, but I'm like, that's unfair because I know what it's like to eat meat. Until I was 40 years old, I ate everything between, that you could think of from animals. So it would be kind of two-faced for me to all of a sudden expect that he was going to be on the same exact journey as me. And that's my whole spiel, basically, as a vegan lifestyle consultant, is that I meet people where they're at. I can't expect that you are as, aware or conscious as I am because I've been focused on this particular journey. You might be more conscious about something completely different, in your life, right, that I haven't thought of. But we all have to kind of like realize, oh, I remember when I was, not a meat eater and I thought vegans were strange and I was scared that it was going to be restrictive and boring and, all I could eat was kale and drink wheatgrass juice and, I had all these like preconceived notions. And luckily for me, I chose to go vegan when it was already starting to become, I wouldn't say mainstream, but it's getting there, like dairy consumption and dairy sales are plummeting now. More people are lactose intolerant, or like I say, they're just not baby calves, they are humans. So we don't drink the milk from another species. And this is, again, something we were like, the meat and dairy industry has done such a wonderful job and very great job of, convincing us that we need these foods to be healthy. Milk for strong bones, eat your meat or you're going to go deficient in iron. There is just, you could go one after the other.
It's so not true. It's so not true.
Yeah, and I just want to make a distinction because I would never say that a vegan diet is the only way you can be healthy. but you can be absolutely 100% healthy on a whole food plant-based diet. And there is a difference, whole food plant-based versus vegan. I mean, you could eat French fries and drink Coca-Cola all day and be vegan, right?
Right, right.
But, you know, I said, look, why wouldn't you choose the latter? Because then you are also sparing, you know, the animals from being killed and from torture and all these slaughterhouses happening that are horrible to humans too, by the way, not just the animals.
Sometimes I find it even more difficult to think about the people who work in slaughterhouses.
Yeah,
I'm thinking to myself how those people can sleep at night. You know, with the smell that stick to your clothes and to your skin, and you know,
it's not good. I mean,
something that show up in your dreams.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're surrounded with death and torture and fear every day. Imagine what that does to your psyche, what that does to you as a human being.
Yeah, you hear the cows mooing, and you know, and the sheep and the goats, and you know, and even horses and whatever, and chickens, you know, and even you don't hear them talking, they spread this energy that comes as a vortex of energy, and you find yourself in it, you know. And you know, back in the days, they used to give, especially in India, that, you know, they are vegan and vegetarian in big parts of them, you know, and you see they're healthy. They used to give meat to the warriors because it makes them aggressive. But at the same note, they didn't expect them to live too long.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, you know, and I know you like this topic too and I really believe in it as well, is that the energy you consume is what really is going to be the energy you carry on. So we talked about it a little bit before getting on, is that if you're eating something dead, if you're eating something that has gone through fear and not wanting to die and have all these negative emotions, what do you think you're going to be, you know, what's going to go into your body? And I do believe there is a correlation between, I know it's not scientifically proven, but, you know, neither is a lot of other things we believe in, right? And we have accepted as the truth. But, you know, it's much easier to not believe it because we want to stick to our traditions and to our taste buds that we're used to eating certain things, and we just don't want to give them up. But we don't need them. But when you're eating these types of foods, I do believe there's a correlation of people who are much angrier now. I see much more depressed.
Oh, goodness. And aggression.
And there's so much, you know, of that, and people are unhappier. And that's not just the diet. Of course, it's the lifestyle of always wanting more and materialistic and this and that. But I do find that we have to look at what we're eating today, and the quality even of meats we're eating today is by far different than, speaking about paleo and all this. Imagine the difference between the meats they ate back then and what's available now in mass-produced, you know, factory farms, right? It's just not, and even if you do say, oh, I only eat, you know, humanely raised, you know, whenever, we're not going to go in there, but even if you do eat a cow that has been grazing in a beautiful field, that cow is still going into the slaughterhouse with all the other factory farm cows, and she's going through that same process of knowing, smelling the blood of her. I mean, I don't want to get too gory in here, but sometimes it's important to think about this, you know, to like be conscious of the choices you make. What is actually going on? And this is what I see, like, even in yoga people and people who are claiming to be spiritual and they're so aware, but this part they have distanced themselves for, right? From. Yeah. They don't want to think about it because it's uncomfortable. Why is it uncomfortable? Because that makes you a bad person, doesn't it? Almost, right? Because I'm like, oh my God, I'm contributing to this. And it's a very touchy topic that I really never really speak about so much in my practice, because I don't find that you attract people with scaring them and fear mongering and all this. I don't believe in that. But as a vegan too, there are those days where I just want to shake people like, come on, you know, like this is happening. So I think we all have our good and bad days, you know, but I think that I do my activism in the kitchen, and that's where my skills and my gifts, God-given gifts, have come, is that I am a great chef, you know, and I will say that I think that I'm excited to cook. I feel fulfilled when I'm in the kitchen, and I feel very creative there, and I want to pass that along to whoever wants to listen and learn, right? And then I also really do find, tremendous gratitude to those who are standing out in the streets and who are doing activism and are going to slaughterhouses and doing racing animals in farm sanctuaries and taking care of those, creatures as well. So, but I think that we all have to find the ways that we can be of most use and most effective, and that's where you find the most passion, and that's when, of course, it's going to be contagious and people will catch on, right? Like, I want some of that, I want to be a part of that, right? So that this was like a whole, I kind of went off on a tangent here, but of course, as you can tell, I have a lot to say about the topic.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking maybe we should have a little bit more, maybe make a series of that, because there's so much to talk about. There's so much to cover. When it comes to the animal aspects, I remember that when we were in Florida, at that event, I remember I was sitting, I think it was that time or it was LA. I was sitting at a table with 2 or 3 other sisters of us, and they were talking about, because I said I'm vegan, and I don't know, it came up, and they said, oh, I love my steaks, and they were like trying to shove it into my face. And I remember that it felt to me like people is puffing smoke into my face when I say, hey, I'm sensitive to this, which happens to me a lot, basically. So for me, veganism is a little bit like trying to keep the smokers out of the room. So it feels to me like that sometimes. And I felt like they were puffing this smoke into my face with how much they love their steaks. And I'm a highly sensitive person, with my extrasensories, abilities and professional skills, and it creates an energy for me. It creates a vision, which it creates an experience for me that was very, very unpleasant. So I projected back to them and I said, how much cruelty can you eat?
Right, yeah.
And I remember that was the last time I ever saw them around me. They didn't even talk to me. They completely ignored me. But, when I was talking about this, and I have realized that there is, it's like touching people's faith. It's like touching people's beliefs. It's like touching people's God. And there are a lot of, and I have realized, and really this conversation today is far too short for expanding on that, but we all want to be gods and we all want to be kings, okay? And think about it, the gods have been sacrificed to. We all used to sacrifice animals and shed bloods for the gods. And when it comes that we want to be kings, is that the king was the one that was having the barbecue, because they had the land, they had the animals, they were the one going to hunting, and look, and whoever, and the peasants, okay, the farmers, the vassals, the one that was living on their property, they didn't have the permission to hunt the animals. They were not even have the permission to hunt the rabbit. The rabbit had a high value even over the time. Not even to talk about a deer. If you hunted a deer on the aristocrats' lands or the king's land, you were dead. Okay, and you cannot even touch a deer, you were dead. Okay, and when it comes to so the high value property would belong to the aristocrats, belong to the owner of the land, and the time that people used to eat meat, that was the festive events. Okay, that was the family reunions. This is not the things that you were eating in the field, because you couldn't take meat to the field. Probably somebody would bite it. Some kind of an animal come and smell it naked, or it would rot outside. It was unsustainable. People were able to take to work with them. Even today, think about it, that you don't carry meat with you in your container, usually. If you want to have meat in your sandwich, you usually buy it. You don't really take it from home, unless now they make sausages and they have all the preservatives in this. Okay, so meat usually used to be some kind of a fresh food, okay, or it comes smoked or salted, okay, and this is not the kind of people that people took with them, because it also smelled. Okay, so people usually didn't take that kind of food with them. So the consumption of food and the idea of eating meat is and to the extent of it today is completely out of proportions. And it's fairly because after World War II and with the development of the refrigerators, the home refrigerator, because before the home refrigerator, before the the technology that allows to move, okay, to traffic meat, you know, with refrigerator and frozen vehicles. They didn't have that ability to process or to deliver or to hold or to sustain meat for such a long time. And if you think about the meat that they have today in the supermarkets, okay, most of it is highly preserved. You know, they put a lot of preservatives in it and a lot of chemicals that are going to chase away the smell and the rot, and they, you know, and I can tell you, I do this. This is the kind of person I am. Sometimes I cannot hold myself. You know, sometimes I see certain people in the Giant, you know, in the store next to me, and I see them sometimes if they have one tray of ground beef, you know, or ground meat, I don't know what it is, you know, and I see that they have a lot of vegetables and stuff like that, or I don't know, sometimes I have my intuition to go and say, you know, this is not a natural color.
Yeah, sure.
And I said to her, this is not the kind of meat you want to put in your body, you know. Yeah. I said it's cheap because it is more than cheap. Because it has no value, that's why it's cheap.
Yeah, yeah. It's I always say that it's funny when people say I don't eat processed foods, and then they go and eat meat, and I'm like, what do you think that is? You know. So, but yeah, I mean, back to what you were saying about World War II, and you know, it wasn't as common because I think back to my homeland, you know, of Norway, and there was actually a study which I think even was listed in Dr. Campbell's The China Study, and he actually had posted to where the disease rates among Norwegians would go down during the World War because there was no access to meat. And then once, you know, the World War II was over, and Norway was actually back in the day, believe it or not, a poor country. And now, of course, it's a totally different, it's one of the richest nations in the world. And what's happened? The meat consumption has shot up. I mean, I remember like even looking at the steaks here in the United States and the size, it was just so like, it was a monstrosity. Like, how can people even eat a 26-ounce steak? And they don't, but I mean, some of them overeat. This, of course, has, you know, links to obesity, heart disease, diabetes, and so forth. And, you know, that has now started showing up in Norwegians. I was just home in May, and, you know, of course, I'm more conscious and I'm more aware, and I kind of notice more now that people are suffering from all kinds of chronic diseases. I was like, when did Norwegians become this sick? But it's like you say, they eat meat for lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That never used to be the case. We used to only have it for special occasions, like maybe once or twice a week and we were like well off, right? But now it's just like, you know, it's kind of a status symbol. And
yeah, it is there is a lot of status symbol and a lot of privilege with that connected with meat. And as I mentioned before, the idea that everybody wants to be God because they want to feel that they are entitled to that animal sacrifice, you know, I was, you know, I have a very, very close relationship with people from the Muslim or religious. And when I pointed towards that, they said, you know, they said, we have to eat meat because God created them for us. So for them, becoming vegan, okay, it's like, it's something unreligious to do. It's how to say, it's heretic, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's a heresy. It's heresy for them not to eat the lambs and the sheep and the, you know, and the chickens because God created them for you. And if God created them for you and you don't eat it, this is heresy. Yes. So and they do believe it. And so this is the point where everybody either want to join God with the idea that they are entitled for that animal sacrifice because it has been made for them, and everybody wants to be a king because, you know, everybody wants to have the authority and the leisure of just having that meat. And you know, we are so ingrained with centuries and centuries of kitchen cultures, I say cuisines. You know that Henry VIII had 51 huge kitchens in his palaces. 51 kitchens. and he had 200 chefs working for him. Okay, so think about the magnitude, and think about the competition that was working between the houses of monarchs at the time, and how it was boiling down into the society that everybody wants to elevate themselves, and eating is part of the culture of status. So meat always have a higher value and higher status when you put it on the table. And if you're going to say that people go into business events, okay, and I know because I realize that they're, in the pharmaceutical industry, they give them a budget, when they are going on events, to have their steaks. They're going to, so if there are, and think about business people, what are they going to eat when they're, armed with their suits and ties and the entire attire, the business attire, and they are masculine? Are they going to put a Caesar salad on their plate, or they are going to put a steak that is going to project their masculinity, their fortitude, and the fact that they're talking money, and money is also very tangible. It's physical, I know that even in Hebrew, the word blood and money sometimes goes together, so people can see it's like branding yourself. It's like sending visual messages, to people. I'm a meat eater. I'm going to eat a huge steak, and it's like there are a lot of statement in it, and it becomes so much ingrained in our culture that
That's exactly it. It's the ingrainment in culture that is the biggest issue. Because, most people don't take the time out to really kind of look into why we do what we do. We just do it because our parents did, our grandparents did, and it makes us feel safe. It makes us feel connected to our people, to our culture, to our society. And we are pack animals. We want to be like everyone else. We don't want to stand out, right? So, and they prey on that, the industry. It's like goodness. Strong men, like, what is it? The strong man eats steak, like you said, or, and even if you are like, actually there's a lot of talk I'm a member of a Norwegian vegan community too. And they wanted to interview more men who are vegan, because you don't see it as much, because that's not masculine, is it, to eat like green beans, So isn't it amazing how we've kind of fooled ourselves into this thinking?
You are absolutely right. We are fooling ourselves, and we're being fooled by a very, very aggressive and greedy and monstrous industry. And if you think about it, people are willing to understand that sugar creates cancer in the body, and they don't see the mass production of sugar behind it, okay, and how much sugar is being infused in their food. But so people are willing to understand sugar, but now the next step, which and sugar isn't made by killing any animal, it's sugar canes, it's just 400 level, processes of refining something to the level that it's a pure chemical, but the same thing happens with meat.
Yeah, it's interesting, and sugar has gotten the, blamed for so many things, It's like sugar. Of course, I'm not saying that eating white sugar by the pound is good for you, for your health, but neither is eating anything by the pound, to be honest, so vilifying that is and giving it sort of the blame, because that's why, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Neil Barnard, but he's done huge studies on that fat is really the reason for why people have diabetes. I mean, and it makes sense, because have you ever seen, most people who get diabetes, not everybody, but a lot of them get it because they're overweight, right? So diabetes comes as a side issue. There are, of course, skinny diabetics. I actually have my brother-in-law has diabetes, and he's not fat by any means. And but there's always exceptions to the rule. My point is, it is much easier to blame sugar. But there's not a lot of money in sugar alone, but there's a lot of money in subsidies in meat and dairy, and a lot of people and groups involved in that. So, that's, the lobbyists are never going to go for never eating meat and dairy. But I am hopeful, because I do see the dairy industry, and not that I want to see any people suffer and lose their jobs. But the point is, there's a million ways to make money. It doesn't have to be taking advantage or killing animals. There's so many other things you can do to create money for yourself. But again, these are farmers who have had the farms for centuries, and maybe sometimes, or generations at least. And so they're playing on that, like, oh, your jobs are going to be lost and people are going to go out of.
Yeah, the fear.
So it's the fear is there, for fear mongering is there. But I would just invite everyone to think, like, how can we create a world in which everybody benefits? And the world is not, I would say the animals are not for us. They're here with us.
Right.
So I think that religion, of course, has also been used, and the books of all religions have been so misinterpreted. Some people say, but it says in the Bible that you should eat meat. No, it says you should be vegan. It's whoever reads the book, you can interpret it in a million different ways.
Basically, in Genesis, basically, the Genesis and the creation of the human. The permission, according to the Bible, to eat meat was a reduce from it was a reduction. It was God gave that permission, especially after the flood, to touch animals. But the basic constitution of the human was not into eating meat. God didn't give that permission to kill the animals. That was a little of, how to say that, it was a discount that God was giving to human to eat in animals. And in Judaism, it's very restricted which animals you can eat and which you never ever touch. And there's just a few of them that basically in Judaism can eat. And there is another, and I thought about it, why have I not gone into veganism and vegetarianism far earlier, okay? And I thought it's because of the illusion that in Judaism, slaughtering animals doesn't hurt them.
Yeah.
Right. So that was the story that I have been fed. And today I say to my Orthodox friends and whoever is willing to listen to it, that there's no kosher meat at all. And this is a big no-no to Jews, because it's a blow. It's a blow, because they want to believe that the animals is being slaughtered in a kosher way, in a way that doesn't create suffering, because it's forbidden to eat an animal that went through suffering in her slaughter. And the same thing for Muslims. It's completely forbidden to eat an animal if it has been savagely or not accurately being slaughtered with, so it came from heaven, so to say, the instruction to prevent animal suffering. But the thing is that the animal goes from suffering from day one, from being conceived even, when you eat eggs, the animals, the chickens goes through suffering from the stage of even being an egg, and as they hatch, the males go to the garbage in millions of them as they are being born, and then they were going through a horrible experience in which they're chopping their beaks, and they keep them in small places, and completely crowded, and they're losing their feathers. And if you see it, and if you have seen that chicken before it had been slaughtered, you wouldn't like to eat it because it looks so miserable.
It's the most abused animal on earth, is the chicken. And I think that there's a reason why they hide them away in these large, they can't even see the daylights. And I don't want to go into religion, because I do believe... No,
it's not about the religion. It's about the principle.
I wasn't saying you did, but I said my point of bringing up the Bible and all this wasn't to criticize anybody's religion.
Oh, no.
It was really more about, like, how do we justify our actions?
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And I think that I say my religion is love, because if I don't hurt anybody, and I'm not talking about just humans, but if I'm showing love and I'm trying to be, and I'm not perfect by any means. I probably kill millions of bugs a year by mistake or this and that. So of course, again, it's not about being perfect. It's about doing the best you can, being as loving as you can to everybody. And I believe, whatever God you believe in or higher power, that you know, we are supposed to be kind to one another, and that everyone is here on earth. There's a reason there are animals on earth, you know, they are here to live their life. You know, we are not, they're not here to serve us in any way. When we can live 100% healthy and strong without eating them, why on earth would we choose to inflict pain? That's my whole basic thing, is that inviting people to think about that. And whenever you have an argument or feel defensive when I say that, just check in with yourself. Why is it? Oh, because then it means I have to give up that steak I love. It means I have to give up my favorite, my mom's, you know, stew that had sausages that I grew up, you know, like that. You could start to really kind of think about, it's really more about your taste buds. It's not that you need certain things for your health, because clearly there's enough research now out there, and I can say that, and if you need me to quote some, I will, that show that, you know, there are vegans who have actually lived 40, 50 years and they haven't died, right? It's like amazing. So, you know, again, it's really about...
Well, there's a whole continent in India that are vegans, and they live very long, right?
Cool. And so I just think that, you know, when we argue, like I actually always bring up, and I don't mean to like in a bad way, but I always bring up my sister-in-law who's from Spain, very traditional, grew up, you know, and she makes no excuses. She wears fur, she eats meat, but she is 100% non-excuse. She doesn't try to argue with me or anything. She believes that animals are here on earth to serve her.
Exactly.
That's in the Bible. And yes. She's like, that's what she fully believes. And I'm almost like, I have to respect that more than people who try to give me all kinds of arguments as to why they need meat and need to wear fur. She loves it, and they're here to serve me. And I'm baffled. That's
the need to be. That's the idea of you wanting to be God. You know, you are being served by inferior creatures, and those inferior creatures are here to sacrifice themselves for your own leisure. This is the archetype of me wanting to be a god, and then there's the archetype of me wanting to be a king and a queen. That basically I can eat meat, you know, when other people, you know, this is part of my status, this is part of my privilege, okay, of eating meat. And and there's another principle that I really want to bring here. And I said this to my clients, you know, when we work, I say you cannot make changes out of a point of deprivation. So if you feel that eating meat is your entitlement, is your privilege, and by reducing the meat or sparing animals, you are depriving yourself from your godly right and from your royal, you know, right of consuming it. You're not going to do it. And if you think about it, the French Revolution was beheading so many heads because the aristocracy was not willing to let go of their privileges for the proletariat. They were not. And this is how they chopped that they lost it all completely. They become a republic. You see? So if we as humans become to the level of we appreciate our status and our privileges and our entitlements more than we consider the right of others to live, we basically cut the branch that we're sitting on. You know?
Yeah, I can relate to what you were saying, sharing. Thank you for sharing that, because I can relate to what you said about deprivation. In my world, you know, whenever that is never a feeling that's going to entice or inspire anybody. So I always say, instead of thinking about, if you are considering going plant-based or vegan or whatever, instead of thinking about everything you have to let go of, like those 5 foods you eat, how about those 3,000, 30,000 plants that are available? However, I'm just throwing out a name, but I'm talking about tens of thousands of plants.
Right.
You can add into your diet. Think about everything you're gaining, all the new different variety of flavors and foods and textures that you've never even like considered, because well, you're supposed to have meatball, mashed potatoes on Monday, right?
Yeah, once you go vegan, you open a whole new world of potentials that you didn't even think that are available before. Yeah.
And I'm not making fun, because I actually did think that myself when I went vegan. And I was like, what the hell am I going to make now? Right? I mean, I actually thought that. I was like, well, I was actually willing to give up my favorite foods that I grew up with, because I had gone into the animal suffering and I saw Earthling, which is the most horrific documentary. But I do, if anyone needs some inspiration or motivation to go vegan, I mean, go look at that. I couldn't even finish it. But, but then I realized a whole new world opened up. So my point is, check with yourself about what your thinking is about certain things when you're really wanting to change, or when you're even entertaining the notion of change. It means that there's something within you that's leading you to that change, that maybe you should listen to it. But then here comes the fear. Here comes all the arguments. But this and this and this, I can't give up cheese, and I couldn't, give up my ice cream. But then when you open yourself up for change, there's a whole new world that's going to enter that you never could even have envisioned existed. But you don't know that until you dare to step in, right? You can't sit here and be in your own mind and think about all the, it's kind of like taking a plunge, like starting a business. You're thinking about all the things that could go wrong versus thinking, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be successful, right? Because we are, initially we're wired to think about all the negative. That's how the brain works. And I know you know this, is that the brain is there to protect us against anything dangerous to happen. So we're going to think up all the scenarios that could go wrong versus really believing in ourselves and really believing in this change of, wow, if I go vegan, I'm going to have so many amazing new things to eat. It's going to be fantastic. I'm going to feel more energetic. I'm going to drop the weight I wanted to drop for so long, and I'm not even going to have to do anything because I just eat these vibrant foods and, sleep better and clear up my skin and maybe even prevent all kinds of diseases that I would have otherwise gotten, because, it's not natural to become stiffer or get diabetes when you're 60. Everyone thinks that you're supposed to get sicker and older and tired. It's not true. You don't have to.
It's absolutely not true. And I'll tell you a funny story. Back in the days, I remember that, I got such a terrible knee pain that I wasn't able to stand on my feet. And it was really, my knees started to swell so hard. And I remember that the next day I was visiting a lecture with a naturopath doctor, and when I came to him, I said, I just had this yogurt, and because he was talking about dairy, products that, that are bad for you, because it basically deprives the body from calcium. And I said, I just had this yogurt and my knees completely blown up and I was not able even to stand on my feet. I felt like a 100-year-old woman, when I was hardly, by the end of my 30s, and he said, okay, no problem. So take another yogurt. If you see that if it's coming back, it's from the yogurt. Because I said, I'm not sure it's the yogurt. He said, so why won't you try it again? And I said, no, I don't think I need to try it again to understand that, that was blowing my knees. Yeah. And you see, but the thing is that I have realized that we have been so brainwashed with that, with and if you think about it, here the industry can basically convince you against your own goodwill. Didn't they convince you with cigarettes? And it's bad for you. They're convincing you with sugar, it's bad for you. They're convincing you with soda, it's bad for you. They're convincing you with all this meat, is bad for you. Even your ancestors ate it. But it's, they're convincing you to consume television from here to the moon, it's bad for you. They're convincing you to use microwave, it's bad for you. They're convincing you to whatever they want because they make money out of it. They convince you to use oil, gas cars, even though the technology to have free energy has been there for decades, and still people use oil in their cars. They blow up the laboratories of Nikola Tesla because he wanted to bring free energy, and we still use all those wirings and cables to have electricity in the homes. So it's not that what they're telling you is true because because they have the money to convince you. You can be convinced with everything.
Of course. And it's interesting you said about, I always think about how crazy it is that people believe that, or they want to believe it, I suppose. But the cigarettes analogy, back in the 60s, the doctor said, smoke in moderation, but they would sit there and smoke. And now today, can you imagine a doctor sitting there smoking and seeing it? But that's what they're doing with meat now. They say eat meat in moderation. Well, if it's not good if it's so good for you, why would you need to moderate it? You don't say eat carrots in moderation.
Right.
So you just think about it. Like it's just a complete, like you said, a complete brainwashing of the population, and then, but then people go and you know, we get a bad rep because we are so passionate about it, and you know, we're called extreme and all of this, but it's just because if you get so touched by it or triggered by it, there must be some truth in it for you if you feel a certain way. Because I mean, if it didn't, you'd be like, you know, but people start to defend themselves, and it's like, well, you're just defending your bad habits. But I mean, I'm not telling you to go change. I'm telling you to think about it. Like,
well,
don't
think about a perpetrator. Let's say somebody is making their living by stealing. Okay, this is how they make their living. Okay, and they have not been caught, and they have not been set in prison, and they never pay any penalty for that. But they're making their living by stealing. Okay, how many stories are going to, and they know that, you know, how many stories are they going to tell themselves in order to justify their stealing? That it's not really important, that the people that they're stealing from have enough, that they don't feel the loss of it, that they can immediately recover from it. You know, so it's a survival mechanism that basically is going to help you to justify any evil. You know.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, just sorry, I'm going to interrupt, but your
Sure.
viewpoints or your, you know, random stories just kind of like, it's so interesting to me because it triggers something in me too. And that is like, we can make justifications for just about anything, right? But does that justification make you feel good, or should you listen to like your heart? Like we live in such a fast society now that we've actually become we've anesthetized ourselves, right? So we drink too much, we have too much sex, we go shopping, whatever it is that takes away attention from what's actually going on inside of you. And I think that's the case with eating animals too. And I do actually really recommend, of course now the name of the author is completely escaping me, but it's called Eating Animals. Oh. And that is such an amazing book. And I really recommend that. And after you post the video, I can put the author in there. But it's just like, it's not a very comfortable topic to talk about, but it really does kind of change your view and your whole life really about how much you lie to yourself every day to just kind of think about it. You know, it's just too easy to just sit down, have a glass of wine and watch, I don't know, Housewives of Atlanta or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's really, that's what people do. They don't want to deal. They just, there's just not enough time in the day to you know, to think about these things. But I think that if we don't force ourselves to do this soon, our planet is going to be in big trouble. So I know we could probably go on and on.
There is a book that I was looking for the title of it, and the name is Vibe. You can see it here, and it's a book written by a very nice woman. Her name is Robin Openshaw, and I will put the link, you know, in under the video too. And she was writing a very beautiful book that is going to back you up when it comes to the energy of food. And I came to this conversation also from the place of energy, and we talk about it by the end of it, that, you know, one day one of my clients showed up, and we were working on her intuition and raising her ability to have more of a extrasensory vision. And one day she showed up and her energy didn't move at all. Completely didn't move. And when I was looking into her energy, I saw that she was eating a lot of meat, and her belly, you know, her space was loaded with that low and slow and you know, and rocky energy. And I said, and I asked her, did you eat meat? And she said yes. We were celebrating my husband's birthday. And I said, that's why your energy doesn't move and you cannot do the exercises. Okay, wow. So some people can disagree with me, but this is what's my experience. This is what I've seen. And I remember that my clairvoyant teacher, she completely forbidden us from sharing any type of meat in our shared meal when we were going on retreats. She said, don't bring it. And you know, and I know when I saw what that energy was doing to the body, I realized that people cannot change their own density. And what the meat is doing is changing the density of our aura. Just that's what I've seen. It just makes the energy very slow. And even people wants to, and I've seen it also when people are not taking care of their density, okay, it will be very difficult for them to go into the higher realms of their own frequencies because they're too heavy. Absolutely. They cannot lift themselves up energetically, you know. So, and you know, that client of mine took it really close to heart, and she became vegan after, and it was very interesting because she became very, so, you know, she becomes very self-aware of her energy, you know, and we talk about the law of attraction and the frequencies, and you want to be in alignment and you want to be in the vortex, but how can you be, how really you can be in the vortex if what you ate, okay, make you feel good for 5 minutes, but makes you bad for 5 hours or 5 days? Yeah. So, you know, so that's another issue I can talk about forever, because I have written, this is another topic that comes with spiritualism and self-development, that people say that, you know, in the Abraham-HIcks, you know, teaching, you know, with Esther Hicks, they say you can eat whatever you want. But the thing is that and as long as you're in alignment with, and what is alignment? Alignment is your level of consciousness. If you're in alignment with killing the animal, enjoy the prey, because enjoy being the predator. But if you're not in alignment with killing the animal, you're not going to enjoy the food. It's not going to do you well. So if you're doubling between animal suffering and eating the food, that's not much of a vibration match over there. There's not much of alignment over there, you see. Wow. So if you want to kill animals, you know, enjoy it completely, and you know, and you know, but if you
yeah, absolutely. You know, again, it's like really about what you prefer thinking, or you know, what you prefer believing in. And what you say makes absolute perfect sense if you're going to go that route, you know, like, and that is probably a topic for another video of ours. I'm sure we'll have like 5 or 6 series.
Yeah, we can have a lot of them.
I do agree. I mean, I enjoy really talking to you because you come from a different perspective. Right. I come maybe from the more practical, food-centered cooking kind of, but the point is we share the same values. You know, we share the same excuse me, viewpoint of really thinking about our choices, making more conscious decisions about how we want to live, and what does that look like. So I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much. And you know, and when it comes, we can come with practical ideas about how to help people to raise their vibration, how to become more of a conscious eating. And from what I've seen, you know, if you have culinary skills, if you know how to prepare your own food, that is very easy. Unless if you're completely dependent on the industrial food, that you just bring your food in boxes and you buy it ready-made, then you have very little choice and very little control of what it is that you eat. But if you get into your own kitchen, okay, then you can basically cook your own remedies. You can cook your own food, and this is where you have control of what basically goes in your plate, and everybody understands that the food industry is not where you really want to find health.
Definitely not today, not anymore, unfortunately. So take charge of your own health, learn how to cook. Great suggestions for sure. You know, basically make a better connection with your food, because that's what the food industry is trying to, you know, separate you from, but know where your food comes from. So great tips, Revital, and great insights. And thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this segment. And I look forward to our next one. We'll think about.
And thank you for your patience and endurance. I know that you had your knee blown yesterday, and you were
I'm still hanging in there. But
yes, and we were trying to work on it for quite some time.
I know, right? Thank you so much.
Thank you. And bye-bye.
Bye, Revital.
Bye.